Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organissima.com. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the Sales World channel, iHealth Radio, the iHealth channel, the EMBC TV network, with a new show, new day, new guest, new topic, a dear topic, again, to my heart. And this is on the business side and the business world. The question always happens to be in my mind, and I've had these debates in the past, and I still do have these debates in the corporate world and the business world in general. We often hear leadership as a concept, leaders, people that are leading, who is the boss, who is a manager, who is a leader, all that stuff. And the debate begins, years back, and it still continues, will continue. And oftentimes those things get a little mixed up. And, this week we're focusing on this particular, logic here and theme. And really it is a big deal, because I personally, I've been working many years, almost 3 decades now in the corporate world, and I've experienced different levels of leadership, and I'm just leaving it as that, as the title. And good, bad, ugly, otherwise, bad decision, good decisions, good folks to follow, good folks that that you might not want to follow. But at the end of the day, I thank everyone that I've experienced in my life. I personally also led, and I still lead different teams, and I always try to strive to be a good leader, and not just a boss or someone in a position of hierarchy or authority. But that's not up to me to decide. People have to judge me on it. So far, it's been good. But with me today, I have the pleasure of having an expert who actually works with companies and businesses and leaders to really bring them closer to what that is, to really get them to the true meaning of leadership. And that is Kevin Kepple, and he is actually from Kepple Coaching, and so he does this for a living, and he's going to guide us through all this. But before we get into all the nitty-gritty stuff, we want to just get to know Kevin. So Kevin, welcome to the show, and thank you for being with us. And let's start with your little journey, how you got into all this world, and how you went about becoming a coach in this particular arena.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Hurricane. I'm really excited to be here, connecting with you, and I love this platform you've created. So I think leadership, for starters, definitely isn't a self-proclaimed title, and I love that you left that up to the people that you lead to call you a leader, and that shows that you probably are a pretty good leader. So big pats on the back for you to kick this thing off. But the thing that really got me excited about leadership, it was a journey over quite a few years. In my 20s, I was working in the hospitality industry while I was in college, and I got promoted to a leadership position. And all right, now I'm a leader. I had no idea what to do, unfortunately. My example was a very erratic leader who was he was a screamer, and he used to scream at us, and he just didn't really lead. He told people what to do, and he was a manager, but not really a leader. And there's a big difference between those two, because nobody wanted to follow him, but we were paid to, so we had to. And that was pretty disheartening, because I thought that actually was what leadership was. And, I questioned whether I wanted to be in that space, because I really don't like screaming at people. I don't like telling people what to do. I really like connecting with people, and I like helping people, inspiring them to do greater things in their life. But I didn't have that example. in that role. But, fortunately I had some great people in my life, great teachers, great, mentors that I don't even know just from reading books that showed me a better way. So I wasn't completely disenchanted. And I went on through my professional journey like so many people do. I had read, lots of books, and I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, which I'm sure a lot of folks know what that is. But one of the 7, famous habits is don't make sure your ladder is not leaned up against the wrong wall, right? Don't climb the ladder of success to get to the top you don't want to be at. And I read it, but I did not apply it. And I went into an industry where I thought I could make a bunch of money because I thought that's what success was to me. And I started having a lot of success at what I was doing. And I realized I was really unhappy. I'd love to say I came to that realization on my own, but I did not. I had a really great coach who was, asking me about my job, and I was like, and I just love it. He goes, dude, I don't even think you like your job. He's like, your tone changed, everything changed. And so I really did like a lot of the things I did. I liked helping other people, be more in their role. I liked helping other people just align with whatever their version of amazing was. And so long story short, he's like, hey, you should be a coach. And, specifically in the leadership space, I think you'd help a lot of people in a lot of ways. And so that was the beginning of my transition. And gosh, that was almost 10 years ago. And so, that brought me really to where I am today, get into, help people be more without making them feel like less.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I mean, I, as you were talking, it kind of brought me back a little bit to the early days as well. And it's funny because you said, when you got a position, you're like, okay, what am I going to do with it? And frankly, the truth of the matter is that it happened to me as well, exactly like that. I remember my first role as a manager. That was the title. And so I had to run a team, and it's something I wanted for the longest. And then when I got it, I sat down in my cubicle at the time, and I'm like, all right, you got the job. So what's next now? What are you going to do? Literally, I used this in trainings because it was true. And it was a moment of awakening. Like, you be careful what you wish for, because sometimes you get it. And then now what are you going to do with it? You obviously have to deliver, you have to succeed. And that's another thing. What is that success? The definition of success, we can spend hours just to determine, because success for you and me may be different. And for everyone, their success is something that they set, it could be just walking sometimes is success for someone that may not be walking, right? Eating sometimes for someone who's sick, and so there's different levels of success. We're talking business success is another, level, but at the end of the day, that varies from one person to the other. But it was funny that you said that, because it kind of brought me back to literally 27 years ago, exactly. I'm a little older, so I've put in a little bit more miles, but I have to say, you mentioned something about your boss, your first experience. And that's a big deal, because that first experience is what's going to make or break sometimes people. And it's almost like, what you learn at home, right? Or you learn in the street, whatever you learn, it stays with you. And unless you're able to differentiate and see what that is, it's a problem. Because some people will stick to that, and they don't know better. They're not looking for better. They just find a way. And that's how they learned it. Now, you obviously did not like it, and you looked for better, and you found better, and you did better. But I've seen people that actually learn the wrong way. And to your point, is like screaming and just like, I'm the boss, you got to do what I tell you, or else, or you get fired. Who's going to be terminated tomorrow? That kind of thing. You don't like it, that door hits you in the back, and no one wants to hear that, as an employee or as a teammate. I prefer to call folks, team or colleagues. I have an analogy that I use, in my world. And, I have a higher rank, if you want to call it in the corporation, but in the last 15 years, that's what I've been doing or more. And, but I always look at it like we're all soldiers, and we have different ranks, but we're all in the same field. We all fight in the same, war, the battle, and so on and so forth. So yeah, you have a rank, but that doesn't mean that you're not, the same as the others, and you're not going to carry the load and work with them and do exactly what they. And if I can't do something that my team does, then I'm not worthy of being there. But that's just one way of looking at it. Now, but this is not about me. It just something to relate to you, because when you said that, it just kind of brought me back to the roots of stuff. And over the years, I had the pleasure of coaching, mentoring, and guiding folks, and that are actually leaders, and some of them actually even exceeded my rank, over their path, which is a pleasure. And I am proud of that, because you know what? I do believe that you can only be a leader if you make other leaders in this world. And the idea is we learn to teach. and to exchange whatever knowledge we have and share with others. I mean, this whole platform was designed for the same purpose. I have knowledge, I want to share it, and I bring resources to share with, the audiences. And so, but that brings us to your, journey. You started originally, you didn't like what it was. Now you obviously had everything wrong with that picture. So what were some of the things that you've experienced at the time? And, ultimately people are listening right now, watching, and this is global. It doesn't matter what country you're in. People tend to have what we call power trips. And the minute you give someone a little bit of authority, that's what they use. Like, I'm the boss. Who the hell are you to challenge me? If you're not allowing people to actually come up and tell you and share their opinion and stuff, then no one is going to respect you, and they'll just stay there to your point. You want to get paid. You're going to do it for a minute, but how long then are you going to last? And that's actually a problem across corporate America and a lot of businesses where they don't keep their employees because they're not happy. So let's talk about that. That's a big, portion of this whole dilemma with leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. One of the most expensive things in the world is when you're churning employees, because you're bringing them in, you're training them, and then they go away. That can be a good thing, like you were sharing about the people you've coached who have gone beyond where they were at, or beyond where you're at because of your coaching. That's phenomenal. That's great impact, obviously. But if you're just losing people because you're not paying attention to them, you're not connecting to them, what's important to them is not important to you, that's really, really dangerous, because you're constantly going to have people in there that are disconnected from themselves, disconnected from each other. And, by ourselves, we're only one person, but, you and I together are much more powerful than two people because of the synergy we're going to create. And that's what we're looking for in any culture. And there's a pretty simple equation, and I've seen it said lots of different ways, but this is probably the most powerful way I've seen it executed. And this is one of the ways that I really am adamant about bringing the focus to and creating from this place. It's, the influence equation, if you will. It's trust, connection, vision, in that order. But so many leaders start at the back of that. They just start sharing vision and expect people to co-create it with them. But if the people that you lead, your teammates, your workers, whatever you want to call them, if they're not connected to your vision and they don't trust you, they don't really care about your vision. They might co-create it, but they are not giving you their full power. And it's not even a conscious thing sometimes. But when you start with trust, right? When, I feel safe when I'm with you, feel safe enough to be vulnerable. That's really, really important, right? Because then if I feel safe, I'll go into the unknown. And in the unknown is the only place I'm going to create. If I don't feel safe, I'm stuck in that fight or flight or, freeze or faint mode. And so it's all reaction and compulsive behavior. And there's no creation in that. But if I trust you, then I start to feel connected to you. And if I feel connected to you, that's whenever, I'm happy to co-create your vision. And, the most powerful leaders constantly reinforce the trust and the connection by doing what they say they're going to do. Like you mentioned earlier, not asking the people you lead to do things you aren't willing to do yourself. You don't necessarily have to do them on a daily basis, but you need to be willing at least. And, Gandhi said it best, right? Be the change in the world you want to see. Because I've coached so many people who have said the same thing, like, hey, this person's not doing this, and I really want them to. And I'm like, cool, are you doing that thing? I'm like, no, I could be better at it. I'm like, well, you're the model of behavior for them. And, you were talking about that hurricane a little bit earlier. It's like we learn how to act, from the people that lead us, from our parents, from society, from leaders. And, if you're modeling a negative behavior and your people are, displaying that behavior, hashtag duh, it's because of you, right? And that's not like, hey, feel bad if that's you. It's just like, hey, we're all constantly recommitting to our version of excellence. And so just do better. Don't feel bad.
Well, thank you. And it's amazing because you hit on a couple of points. One, this concept of the trust factor, right? And people, we hear this expression, people leave leaders, or managers or bosses. They don't leave leaders, rather, they leave, managers or bosses, because again, they don't see eye to eye. There's no respect, they lose that fight. But to your point, trust is key, right? If the people trust in you, trust in what you can do and your ability to help them also succeed and grow, and do things. Empowering people, for example, is a big deal. And some people don't have to do that. They are afraid that if I teach you stuff, that means you're taking my role. A lot of people have that whole concept like, oh, I can't teach you everything because, if I teach you everything now, my job is at risk. If today I think that means I'm not a good person. I'm not even a good, boss. I hate the word boss personally, but the idea is because that's like where people really, gets lost, the fact is, I want you to be better. As a matter of fact, when I started my career path, I looked at my, hierarchies and I say, dude, I want to be in your seat. As a matter of fact, in the interviews, when I interview people and I ask them like, where do you want to be in a few years? I love when someone says, I want to be sitting in your shoes. I'm like, yes, that's who I want. Because you know what? In order for you to be in my shoes, that means we're going to grow. That means you're going to do what it takes to help us, get there. You're going to grow. We're all going to grow. I'm happy with that. As a matter of fact, and we can devise, maybe this company will duplicate, multiply, whatever. There's so many things we can do, but that's a great thing. But it starts with that trust factor. You have to build that. People, like everything else, right? A relationship. Business is a relationship. I go into a company, I got to develop trust across everybody. My hierarchies up, my downline, my coworkers, my peers, everybody. You have to work with everybody, and everybody has to start trusting you. And I've seen this in the corporate world big time, because when you get into a company, the first few months is people are reading you, trying to figure you out, and you got to figure them out. And if they don't like you, they're not going to cooperate with you. They're not going to partner with you. They're not going to work with you. And every department is key. There's no such thing as we are it. I refer to, for example, I'm in the sales world, right? And I refer to the sales unit as just the heart as an organ of the body. Now, the heart is vital to live it, but the heart cannot work without the kidneys, without the lungs, without the brain, without everything else. Otherwise it's not going to work. We're all operating in one, unison, type of concept, but one element alone is not enough. We all have to do it. And you said it, you and I together are better than one. More of us is going to be better than most of us, if not none of us. And the idea is the more the merrier. And I can think of many things, but I cannot think of everything, and that's where we complement each other as a group, as a team. As we always use the expression, there's no I in team, right? It's all of us or none of us. But when it becomes one person leading, well, you know what? Sometimes they'll allow you to do that, and then you gotta, you're basically gonna sink, because they'll put you right by the hill and they back off. It's like, bye-bye, sayonara. I've seen that happen too. So it's dangerous, but trust is key. And I appreciate that you said that in that order, because to your point, vision is big. Obviously, a true leader has to have a vision. I use a concept personally where anything we do, anything in operations or activities, or even strategy, whatever, I bring it to the team and I tell them why we're doing it. Not because we're just doing it because I'm saying so. You see, if there's no buy-in, there's no understanding, there's no buy-in, there's no buy-in, there's no production, there's no performance, there's no following. Because they don't even get it, So what's the point? I get it, but they don't. So they're going to do most of the work here. And therefore, they need to understand better than me the concept. As a matter of fact, my staff knows some things better than me, because I want them to be more effective in that area, and that's what they're there, right? They're doing their job. We all do our functions, but they're actually more knowledgeable in their field of expertise than I am. I am here to help them, guide them, do the stuff through other, reasons. But the fact is, without them, I don't exist. I mean, there's no such thing as, and I'm not referring here about me, but really this is about a leader is no one without their team or whoever is surrounding them. Because if you think that you are good, think twice. There's a lot of good people, but you're only as good as the people that surround you and that support you and work with you. And if they fail you, you can't, it's funny, you can't fight a battle by yourself. I mean, you could. You're probably going to die quick. But if you have an army, there's a good chance you can win that battle, right? But it's the same thing. I mean, I love to make reference to war, and it's because, again, business has a lot of war strategy in it, and it operates almost the same way to a lot of stuff. But the fact is, these are key elements of leading and really just developing teams and kind of making sure that the businesses succeed. So you factored in trust, and then you had other, elements between vision. So let's talk about those other two elements.
Sure. I was really connections, kind of the bridge between that trust and the vision. Like you had such a great point where you're like, because all people are kind of asking the same questions of the leader, right? Like, do you like me? Number one. So I feel like you don't like me. I probably don't feel like you trust me. I probably don't trust you. And then number two, is like, can you help me? Can you help me get what I want? Right. Is what I'm connected to you in any way? And, that's a really, really important question that we answer properly. And one of the ways or that I see, sabotaging people over and over again is they're trying to give something they don't have. Like, like a leader's not connected to who he is or connected to, his purpose and his truth or him or her, like then that leader can't share a connection with somebody else. Like I can't give what I don't have. Like if I'm completely disconnected, like how can I connect with you? And so first off, like answering those two simple questions, and you touched on that one of them a second ago. It's like, what do you want and why do you want it? Those are so simple, but so many people, if you ask them that, they'll give you a very long answer that says nothing because if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it. And like, that doesn't, make you a bad person. It just means you need clarity. But if you, lack clarity, like you're basically going to wander around in circles and go back to what's familiar because that's all you know. And so what do you want to create in your role and in your business? And like, another way to look at it, like, what are you passionate about right now? And passion's great, but passion can burn out. And so the why is really important. That's the second question. What do you want? Why do you want it? Because why is the purpose? Like, and the way you get to the purpose is, okay, this is what I'm passionate about creating. How do I mix generosity into that? Right? Like, how will this benefit others? Right? And that's your kind of what and why. And there's multiple, purposes. Like we all share the same inner purpose, right? To grow as much as we can so we can give it away. That's the reason we have all these gifts, right? But the outer purposes, we have a financial, a physical, a mental, emotional, all these different purposes. But, professionally, like if I truly want to connect with people, I have to understand what I am and what I'm not. And, like one of the greatest quotes, like maybe ever, but definitely Steve Jobs had was, he said, hey, we don't hire smart people so we can tell them what to do. We hire them so they can tell us what to do. And it's like, I don't hire people to build me a website so I can tell them how to go code it, because the website would never, ever launch if that was the case. Like, their genius is that. And I don't need to get in there and, muddy the water at all. And so the way that you connect, for one, understand, who you are and, what you're not, but then really working to understand who the people are that you lead. And, that's one of the things that we do is really help people align with whatever their, genius is and really optimize that genius. And it gives you permission to not try to be good at everything, for one. And also when you're operating out of your unique natural talents and attributes, like that's how you develop superpowers. And by understanding what you do at an extremely high level, and also what it looks like when you completely sabotage your own efforts and give away your power. And then really understanding how to see that in other people too. And we give people a tool that, it's like a cheat sheet to people's genius. And it's based on, statistical data from decades of studies. So it's a very, very powerful tool, but it's like, it takes work because you got to understand it, right? And there's a little bit of art to it, but it's still statistical data. It's like, hey, based on the way this person's built, these are the types of things that they're going to do at a very high level. And these are the types of things that they're going to miss. And that's really cool because we all understand that we're all unique, but we still take the shortcut of assuming that everybody sees the world the way we see the world. And we just don't, because we haven't had the same life experience. We haven't had the same morning, who knows what happened to Hurricane before he got on the podcast today. But you know what? I'm guessing it was positive. He showed up with a great attitude, but you know what? He's a pro. So I don't know. Maybe he had a really hard morning, but it's really beautiful. Like I talked to Hurricane the other day on the phone and he was sharing some of the really cool things that he's done. I'm like, man, I don't do that. That's amazing. I didn't feel bad about myself. I was grateful that I know somebody powerful like him. And so just really, understanding who you be and working to really see who people are, because that's the most fundamental need of humans, right? Like is once our basic needs are met is to know other people and to be known by people. And man, when you have somebody who truly sees you and you feel like what's important to you is important to them, like that's how you create quantum leaps in individual performance and group performance. And, wow, if you truly want to create a championship team in any environment, business, sports, whatever, family, like you have to grow as individuals and you have to grow together as a team. Like that's how you go to level 10.
Thank you, Kevin. I mean, it's fun. It's amazing. I'm listening to you, and some references coming to my mind. And I actually use movies, in a lot of trainings and stuff, because movies can show character. Movies can show true leadership, and especially war movies, sport movies, they're the biggest, and also what do you call them? Disaster movies. That's when you see like, the people, there's always one that is going to lead by default because they're built that way. There's always one that is like, the anti, lead. They think that they lead and they do everything, they kill everybody because they're just so stubborn. They don't want to listen. And, but it's funny. I use those in trainings and we debate them in training. So we'll project the movie and we'll go over it and then we'll have a discussion about it. So what would you have done in this case? Which character would you think you would have? And I ask the questions for myself. Like when I watch a movie, I'm like, shit, what would I have done if that was me? And it's when you ask that question, and folks listening right now, do this exercise. You'll be surprised what your answers are going to be, because you'll be like, oh boy, this is a tough one, because you don't know until you're in those positions. And in business, you have to make decisions, and some decisions are vital to that business progression and success. Some of them are affecting lives. I always say this: one of the worst things in leadership in general, or management, in a role of management or leadership, especially in the business world, is when you have to decide on the fate of someone, an employee. And it is probably my worst, time. It's not probably, it is, that is the least of my favorite part of doing what I do for the last, almost 3 decades. But I do have a rule about it. I want to sleep tight at night. I want to sleep comfortable. So what my base on it is very simple. I will give everyone the most opportunity to succeed, to do whatever they have. We'll go the extra mile. We'll go 2 extra miles if we have to, until we get to the point where there is no return. There's nothing I can do anymore. And I want to make sure they understand that. And by that point, I do this. I do say this all the time in interviews, and I say, or training as well. I say, I have terminated a lot of people, never fired one person. and termination is just a process. Firing is that, like I actually am booting someone out but I never do. People fire themselves, because of what they do. And the way I look at it is, if I open the door to someone on a team, to be part of that success, it is up to them to make history and to do the stuff, and we'll give them the support, the coaching, the mentoring, and all that. But I cannot do it for them. There's a limit to, everybody's got to function, and they have to all equally do what they have to do. And if they don't, again, we refer to the body. If your kidney is not functioning well, your body is not going to be cool, right? The pandemic, a good example, people had, respiratory issues, they had other complications, right? So same thing, if one person is not doing and affecting the team, and sports is a big deal. In the sports world, you see it all the time. You're looking at a whole group of people. In football, you got 2 teams working. There's 4 teams, the defense, the offense, and they switch back and forth. And everybody has to do everything exactly how they're supposed to win. And one person doesn't do their job, is over. Anything, in any team type of activity, and we do a lot of team building, activities as well. I love to do those things. And I don't know. What is that? There's a restaurant, and we did a couple of things. We did some of those escape rooms. It's awesome actually to see how the team works with those, because it's everybody really putting their help together to get out of that room, right? And you'll see, and that's the thing. So now you have leadership, you have people that are working together. How do we break down this task, and who's going to do what? And it's not about me, I got this. No, it's so one time we went to this Dave and Buster's, and there was this quest. And so we had multiple teams divided in 4 teams, and we had the quest, and we had all the same. And so the exercise was to see how everybody's going to behave. So initially, everybody started competing against each other. So all the teams, like, I want to be the first. I want to be the first. It got worse. It got difficult, right? So I started seeing that teams started aligning themselves to each other and helping each other. By the mid-game, everybody was working together, and I stopped the game and said, guys, you figured it out. We can do more together. And we were able to finish this whole charade in half of the time that if we were actually all doing it separate, because if we did it separate, we would have been lost. Because it wasn't about who's going to win. It's about how we do it as a team, and whether we all can make this happen. And we all got early out of this game, and we were all happy to share the same prizes. And it was a good experience. And people didn't realize the exercise, in the beginning, because they were all winning. Like, I want to win. Now, winning personalities are great, and everybody loves to win. And another question I use in interviews, like, do you love to win or hate to lose? You throw that at people and they'd be like, huh? Like there's no real answer, but it's just an angle. But I mean, things like that help. So in this process, to your point, the connectivity or connection is a big deal. We are humans, and human factor is a key element. And there's vibes. Energy is also a thing. If your team does not feed off your energy, and you don't feed off their energy, that's the other thing. This is not always about one way. This is a two-way street. Your team drives you. If my team, when I go into a meeting and they're all excited and stuff, I love that stuff. But when you go into a meeting and everybody's like, there comes another guy, that would not be a cool thing for me. And at that point, I would not even be happy to be part of that team, and I'll have to manage myself out. That's the other thing. It's not about you. This is not about, as a leader, it's not always about you as the person. It's about how you work with everybody and how everybody else is helping you, supporting you, whether they even appreciate you. Because if you're not appreciated, you should wait, a little bit and say, like, what the hell's going on? It cannot always be them, like shame on, this is going to be shame on me now, because if it's the first, the second, the third time, everybody's got the same opinion about me. It is funny. Kevin, I did something funny one time about a few years back. I put in LinkedIn a post, and I said, if you ever work with me any capacity, as a hierarchy, as a downline, as a partner, I want you to grade me, give me your review. And I put myself out, and actually I was surprised. Everybody was okay with it, and I didn't, there was one bad comment, in the whole thing. And there was a reason why that comment happened, which is okay. It was an honest opinion. But the fact is, not everybody does evaluate themselves all the time. And the truth is, you need to do that. You want to have the ability to evaluate yourself. Why is it not working? What's going on? Am I doing something wrong? How am I doing this? Now, you're not always right, and you can't always be wrong. You got to find, more goods than bads. But, like you said something about positivity earlier, positive is a key. You got to see the world. I mean, I get this question sometimes about me, like, tell me something. What is your weakness? I say, I don't see negative. I have a problem. A true problem. I cannot see negativity. I don't care what you tell me. I'll find something positive in it. And that's annoying because like you really like, there's nothing that you can throw at me. I make a joke. You tell me about that. I'll give you good reasons why that is good. And you'll be like, wow, this guy is like, he's lost a little fuse there, but it's not just how I'm made. But this is, again, I'm giving examples based on my personal experience, but obviously there are different types of folks out there, different types of personalities. But I think the traits are the same when you're talking about leadership. You talked about, the idea of Steve Jobs, right? We bring people to tell us what to do, and it's funny because you do consulting, coaching. I've done some of that as well. And, sometimes you bring the ideas to the team and they don't apply them. You show them, you do the assessments, you show them what it is. This is why it's not working. And here's the backup, but nothing happens. What are you going to do about that? And it varies. And some companies, they have people in positions that probably are higher level positions, but they just don't have the leadership, skills that they need. And therefore they don't succeed. And believe me, I've seen a fair share of those, and it's unfortunate. Now in your world, I mean, you do this day in, day out. You're helping, folks and companies and individuals. What is the most, that you see as a detrimental, piece of I guess, concept that affects people the wrong way, and therefore they lose the ability to lead properly?
Wow, we could spend days talking on this, and this is going to be an opinion, but man, there's one big thing that I see that just hammers people into the ground and keeps them stuck, and it's like the need to be right more than the need to be kind. And whether that's with other people, and like if you're right, then you're making somebody else wrong. And I've never ever been around somebody that I walked away from thinking how happy I was that they were right constantly. Like I've never had that thought, but I have had the thought, like, man, that's a really kind person. And especially when they're in a powerful position and they're still kind, that shows me that they're my kind of people because they're humble. And, that humility is beautiful because it means they're going to constantly evolve to higher levels. And, that kind versus right needs to be pointed back at ourselves too, because we all like wield this like sword of truth, so to speak. Right. And if we're chopping people off at the knees with the sword of truth, that's not very productive. But if you use that sword of truth to point to the truth instead of, chopping at people, that's a little more effective. And if, when it comes to yourself, like, hey, you're not perfect and you're never going to be perfect. If you're not making, mistakes or stumbling or getting knocked down on a regular basis, then you're not going very big. You're not doing things that are hard for you because, and my experience, the first is always the worst. The first time I rode a bike was the worst. The first time I spoke in front of a crowd was the worst. The first time I walked, I bet I hit the ground a few times, but I got it down pretty good now. I get everywhere I'm going almost every time, and it's like, if you can't be humble enough and to look inwards and, be really gentle while you do it. It's not to feel bad. It's to do better. Like, cool, this is, this was the intention. This is what I wanted, but here was the result. Like, what could I have done better? What did I do well? I need to evolve to the next level. And maybe what do I need to start doing here? And that's reflection. And reflection is like the most underutilized thing that we can do, because when you reflect on any experience, that's where you actually get experience from your experience. When I'm in the moment with something, a task, a person, or whatever, I need to be present to that task. Whether I'm, washing a dish or coaching a CEO, I need to be in the moment, or I'm gonna, miss things that are very important. And being present is so crucial, because if you're not present in a conversation, I'm sure you've had those conversations, Hurricane, where you're talking and you share some brilliant things, or maybe you feel they're brilliant, and the person sitting across from you responds with something that tells you all they were doing was simply waiting on their turn to talk. They're not listening to a word you're saying. And it gives you that feeling of, hey, I'm not just trying to prove to you that, I know all these words. I'm trying to help you. And so, kindness is listening and just sharing a safe space for people. Like, you're a phenomenal listener. Like, you're engaged and you're interested. And I think that's really powerful. And, whenever you practice that ability, being kind more than right, like that's a very, very good form of that extreme ownership that Jocko Willink talks about. If you've ever read any of his stuff, it's like, man, we're responsible for everything in our lives and everything on our team, as the leader of, our team at work, our sports team, our family, whatever. If something doesn't go the way you want it to, what could you have done better? That's the proper way to look at it. Because if you make it somebody else's fault that they didn't perform in the way you wanted them to perform, then you just made yourself a victim as the leader, a victim to their results. And, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a champion, and champions aren't victims. And so if something doesn't go the way I want it to, with kindness, I'm going to look first at me. What could I have done better in the situation? And then, at whoever's involved. And to kind of piggyback on something you said a little bit earlier too, not everybody is ready to grow and evolve. Some people want to like fight ferociously to stay the same. And, I can't make the horse drink the water when I take him to it. I used to have a boss who would always say to me when I'd get sideways over somebody I was trying to help who just wouldn't get it. He's like, Kevin, if Jesus Christ couldn't save everyone, what makes you think you can? And I would get so mad when he would say that, but he was so right, And so that's a little shout out to the great Joe.
Well, hey, listen, you're hitting again on some superpower stuff, and the concept of right versus being humble versus, being kind, right? Are concept that sometimes elude a lot of people. Let's be clear. And the reason being, to your point, we all are hanging on to the idea that, I know more. That's why I'm in this role, and that's the thing. When you're a leader, you think that, you're at the pinnacle, you're like up there, and no one knows better than you. That's not necessarily true. There are people that are just as good. You might be in that top tier of that group, but that doesn't mean that someone else cannot know a better, idea, or have a better idea, or an angle of an idea, or something that can benefit. The whole idea is that you're not going to do it alone. You want those people. But if someone, to your point, may be wrong, and this is not like, well, you're stupid. What the hell is that? No, he's like, well, I can tell you, here's the thing. And by the way, this happens all the time. In some of the discussions of things, like when someone throws in something and I know maybe they're not as accurate, or they're not as, they actually on the wrong, but I don't put them in the wrong. What I tell them, like, all right, well, let's do this. Why don't you give me all the argument behind it? Let's see how it works. And then let's debate that. And so here's the thing. When they start doing the discussion, they discover that is not what they thought. And ultimately, they're the ones who actually determine that, oh, you know what, I think, we could have done it differently because this is not working. And it's all about how you approach things, right? The other thing is you talked about being humble and caring and kind. I hate to bring the same topic about termination and stuff, but I've terminated people and we were friends. It sounds weird, and we're still friends. And it's not because of anything, because it turned out that people realized what happened. And remember, I don't own the company, for example. When you work, in a company, you still have policies and things that they have to follow. But it gets to that point where people we don't have to leave where we hate each other. And by the way, on the flip side, I left companies where I was not happy or whatever, but I don't have a grudge with the people. You know what? This is not working out. Your vision and my vision, we're just not doing this. This is not happening. It's like a relationship, like a marriage, right? It's funny in interviews, people are always hanging the idea that I'm going for an interview. That means I'm being interviewed. I look at it differently. When I go to a place, I'm interviewing them just as much as they interview me, because I want to see if this is a place that I want to be in. Is this a boss or leader that I want to refer to or be someone that I would respect, or if someone that I'm just going to challenge? I've had actually opportunities where I didn't choose the job, and I declined the job because I knew that if I had taken the role, I would actually be clashing. We will have a power trip, clash, royal battle, because it will be just like, forget about it. I know, we know we do, and we're not going to see eye to eye. But we could align, our expertises and kind of really our knowledge and work with each other. And the best leaders I've had are the leaders that you don't even think you report to. Literally, you work with them. They make you feel that you are in charge 100%. They're there to support you. They help you. They guide you, but they're not the ones who are telling you what to do. They're allowing you to do things, and they're guiding you as you need to. They give you directions. They don't correct you like, oh no, that's wrong. That you shouldn't be doing that. They say, well, what about if we did it this way? Did you consider this other option? And those are leaders that you would love to be there with them, because you will do whatever it takes for them. I've had leaders that, bosses, in the terminology, or managers or higher, where to date, I still thank them. To date, I will still, recognize them. And from this platform, I had a show before about just recognizing those who actually had, an input in our life and helped us succeed in our lives. And we should, thank them, because of them, we're here today. And all of us watching and listening have some of those folks in their lives. And so, yes, always recognize those people. And those are the people that make you feel good about yourself in the morning. You wake up like, I want to do more. I want to do more for you. You just have to ask me something. I'll be more than happy to do it for you. Because you're asking, I'm going to do it. Even if you don't ask, I'll do it. And that's when you get to that point and you have someone to that level, that's the best level of feeling that you have in the workplace. And to your point, you wake up happy. I'm going to work. I'm actually not going to work. I'm going to have fun. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. We have a great day today ahead of us. We're going to do great stuff, as opposed to like, oh shit, I got to go and I'm going to go to this meeting and I don't even like that person. I'm just going to be hearing their voice and I'm just going to your point. Now I'm going to be that guy that's just watching you like, sure. Okay. Whatever. And that's not really what we want, but really, if you're watching and listening, this concept is probably a core piece that if you can get to that point where you as a leader make people feel that way, and you as the downline or the actual, staff member, see if you can get to the point where those leaders are making you feel that way. If you can get to that point, that means you're in a happy place. And there's nothing else that's going to be better in the world of business. And if you only own business, that's the other thing. Do you consider that as a fact, or because you own the business now, things are going to change? As a matter of fact, it doesn't matter what position you're in, you are a business person. And the way I look at it, like we all own our own businesses. I tell people, I never work for a company. I work for corporate, but I never work for a company. I work for myself and my family. And the corporation that I work with is actually my financial institution. They provide me the resources to operate my business. The income or the compensation I make is my profit margin from my business venture after expenses. So it's all how you position things. And when you start building that with the team and the folks, they start seeing themselves as owners not just employees. A whole different thing changes. It's them. Like I tell people, we started a small company. You're part of history. Everything we do today, the success will be yours. I don't say like I did, we did. I was part of it, but we did. Because there's nothing I've done in my work or history that I did alone. There's nothing I did alone. I came up with some things, some ideas, whatever. But teams put them together. Teams made them happen. Not one person. Never it's one person. And so for those folks that you said it, I mean, we could spend hours on discussing this topic where people sometimes they forget that. They look at you like you don't exist or you're inferior. You're not like, you're just another, what do you call them? One of those things on chips on a chessboard. You know what I mean? But it's not the case. So Kevin, you obviously experience different types of personalities in these things. And what would be some of the key personalities that you've encountered, in terms of leaders or claim to be leaders? There's different levels, right? There's the self, like proclaimed leaders, like I am the boss, I am them, I run the world. And there are the people that are like to what I just mentioned. They don't even see themselves as leaders, but they're by default leaders.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think really, if you want to go to the 30,000 foot view, you could really drop leaders into two categories. You have that authoritarian dictator, my way or the highway. I'm the smartest person in the room with the best ideas, actually the only ideas. And, it's all about me. And you're going to hear the word I and me and my. And if it's good, it was all me. If it was bad, it was all you. And obviously that's a dangerous style of leadership, but unfortunately it's, somewhat common or prevalent even. But, the really beautiful types of leaders that I've been lucky enough to experience, especially like on the tail end, when I worked in the corporate world as more of the servant leader. And, there's lots of different names for it, but I was thinking of the last boss I ever had actually before I started my own company. And now I have the best boss in the world. It's me. But his name was Sean, and Sean was great, man. Sean was a really powerful leader. And I remember when he and I were sitting at an event, and I was getting ready to give my first speech the next day. And, I'd been preparing it, and I'm like, man, this is, a couple of days before. And I was like, what do you want me to talk about? And he looked at me and he goes, man, I didn't hire you so I could tell you what to do. He goes, I hired you so you could show me what you can do. And that was it. I'm like, all right, cool. And I went out there and I did my thing. And, I find it difficult to be self-objective, right? Like, like, how'd you do? I'm like, good. That's always the response. Like, good, like, I don't know, good, I guess. Right. Cause it's objective anyways, subjective, whatever. And, I walked off and I was like, hey, what could I do better? And he's like, well, you tell me. And, it really helped me understand how to, reflect and do it with that kindness, and really how to get better through my talents and not do it his way, because we don't need, 5 copies of him running around. We need him as the leader, and then, the powerful people he inspires behind him. And that was one of the many great lessons that he definitely taught me, was just to be really present to the person you're with, because I had 2 counterparts around the US. There was 3 of us that supported the whole US, and the other 2 people on my team were completely different than me. Like background wise, talent wise, skill wise, but we all did a similar job, but we all did it in different ways. And he was really good about not having favorites or making anybody feel less than, and letting everybody win their way. And that was really cool, because the opposite side of that's that authoritarian, where it's the only way you win is by doing what I want you to do when I want you to do it. And don't you dare be shinier than me in the way you do it, because if you outshine me, that's a bad thing. And man, that is such a dysfunctional way, because like, if you have to be, the smartest person in the room, like, you're not setting the bar that high, because you're not going to be the smartest person in the room at everything that you're attempting to do. And if you are, then, like, if you have this burning desire to have to be number one, then, like, maybe you need to set your sights a little smaller and be a professional underwater basket weaver. I don't know, but something that nobody else is interested in, because that's the only way you're going to be the best at everything that's coming across your plate.
Well, Kevin, thank you for bringing that, because that is a big deal. And sometimes, you get to succeed, right? well, let's say there's a project or whatever, you're working towards a goal. Let's say in sales, it's always a goal, right? And so there's a quarterly target that as a team we got to get, whatever. And you get there. And then you have this, to your point, two different leaders levels. One that says, and I was able to do this, and we got this, and and all the credit is to that person. On the flip side, you have someone who actually gives the credit to everybody else that contributed to that. A good example, I'll give you this. I had made it my way to actually give certificates of recognition to every single unit that contributes to any of the successes, including my bosses, and I mean, my hierarchies, because to be honest with you, sometimes we don't even realize that. The reason we do things is because some of those folks are working hard to get us the things we need, the tools we need to get to succeed. And sometimes, so people sometimes they're just like so into themselves that they forget that without the top or the bottom, if you want to call it that way in the hierarchy, level in the staircase, it doesn't matter. You need both sides to succeed. You're in the middle going up and down, but the idea is that both sides have to be there to complement you. There is no, that's the part that people don't get. You mentioned something earlier about, people become powerful and they go to the next level, but, sometimes also you have to remember who got you there. Because, sometimes you slip when you drop down, it's going to be very hurtful. There'll be a lot of people willing to step on you and really like, oh, you see, that goes karma is a bitch, right? You're going to hear that a lot. And you don't want to be that. In order for someone to succeed as a leader, you need to understand your team. By the way, they're different people. You said it. That's a very great example. You're different from your colleagues. Your way is different. You're still going to be able to do your and that's the other thing. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? well, that's exactly right. There's not only one way that means that's the only way. There's other ways. Just because you haven't thought about it doesn't mean it exists. It doesn't exist. Someone else would come up with a new angle like, oh, that makes sense, and it works. I mean, I'll give you a good example. It's funny because with my kids, they do math and they do new math. And there's no new math or old math, but they do it a different way to calculate certain formulas. And they come to me, I'm like, I don't know how to do it your way, but I can tell you how I do it my way. It works the same way. We get the same result. But just because I learned it one way doesn't mean that was the only way. There's a new way and vice versa. So I just have to adapt to things. I mean, we have Zoom, we have StreamYard, we have this, we have options. There's options for everything. And there's only not one style. And the other thing is, I think that I found very interesting in the leadership world is that delegating. Some people live and thrive on delegating. There's nothing that they do. They just assign. They just take it and then, all right, I'm going to have someone do it. To your point, how do you get people to believe in you if they have not even seen you being able to do stuff or teach stuff or educate and show them how it's done? Most of the people look up to you in that role to say like, hey, what can we do here? People sometimes, and this is the biggest dilemma in the world of business, is that people are shy away from decision making. Not everybody wants to be the guy or the gal that made that call, and that's the other thing for leaders. You have to be able to make calls, and you take the best concept, and the best, guess, with a decent amount of data and whatever statistics and whatever, support. And then you make that decision, the call. People are afraid to make that decision. Most of the time they don't. They look up to you like, hey, what are we going to do? See, for me, I would say, what would you do if you were in my shoes?
That's powerful leadership right there. Not solving problems for people, but empowering them to solve problems. Because if you solve all their problems, then you have to solve all their problems. And if hurricane's not around, we have a problem. We can't move till hurricane's back.
Well, Kevin, it's funny. Hurricane is just a funny name, but I just came back from a cruise. And you know what? The joke about the cruise, who's running the ship? Because the captain's having dinner. The captain doesn't have to be at the bridge so the ship can run, right? There's always other people doing the job, and they're just the next captains. But that's the thing, finding talent within your team, finding different expertise, and everybody's got an angle. And one of the good movies I've used, actually, believe it, it's a funny movie. It's about Google. It's the Internship. If we watch that one, right? It's a bunch of crazy to multi-generations group that get together, right? For those that haven't watched it, please go check it out. And I used it actually as a training. and content. And it's about building a team from literally, the scraps of other teams, because no one wanted these people. They were rejects in a way, and they became the winners because of how they operated. Everybody had that expertise and a strength. They just kind of contribute to each other in their own ways. So I compliment you, you compliment me. We have different things. We add somebody else. Somebody knows about lighting. Guess what? Let's get somebody an expert lighting, some audio. I mean, talking about the context of a studio here. But that's the thing. It's all of us, not one of us. And that's what makes it, work. You don't get a lot of that. Sometimes people don't see that value. They're just like, I'm the boss. That's it. To your point. And that's the biggest percentage of the type of leaders out there, as opposed to the other way around. Sad, but true. So, Kevin, you do this, currently. You're helping, corporations. You mentioned something about leading, training or coaching CEOs. I mean, CEOs have probably the hardest job because they had to report to a board, and they're, really entrusted with the success of whatever that business is. And their decisions, as much as we think sometimes CEOs' jobs are easier because we think about what they make and what they do, their jobs, the higher you are in the hierarchy, the job is harder. People don't realize how it is, because you have to think of everything. You have to make sure that we have all that stuff in place, and you are responsible. To your point, if you fail, like I always say, if we fail, this is not about you. Now, that means there's got to be another me in a year from now, because I'm going to be replaceable. There's a good chance to replace a hierarchy level than an entry point level, because, we have roles. We are joining companies to bring them to the next level. If we can't deliver, then it's time for us to move on and they get somebody else. That's always a difficult task. That's why you see a lot of corporations within a few years to go through a few CEOs. And it's very common, even in the large corporations, because, the visions are there. There's financial, I guess, target in there, and obligations, accountability. It becomes very difficult. So someone being at the helm of some of the corporations, small or large, it's not an easy type of role that you just want to look at and okay, well, he is the boss. She is the boss. No, they're the helm. We don't, and that's one thing I want to eventually talk to once we talk about this, is how some CEOs, for example, or top, level executives, see the teams and work with the team. I've seen leaders, CEOs that actually are in the trenches, go to the field, spend time with the teams, check on people. And I've seen CEOs that will look the other way if you walk by them like you didn't exist. I've seen both spectrums, which is annoying sometimes to know that people are like that. I mean, just because you happen to be the CEO doesn't mean without that person that's out there, but they're not just a number. They're a human. And if you see them, you spend some time with them and respect them. But again, I can't change their minds. You as a coach, you have the ability to actually maybe point out some of these things. And, so let's talk about that. The role of a CEO, you coach those people, what typically is some of the stuff that you work with, stuff that you go through? I mean, people think CEOs, they're like, they're already upped up, they don't need any help. That's wrong. So you come in to someone of that level and you kind of guide them and help them and work with them. What are some of the things that you would potentially assist with?
Sure. So, I mean, first and foremost, working, whether it's a CEO or a manager or a VP or whatever, it's always the same starting point. It's like, hey, what do you want? Because if we don't know what you want, how in the world are we going to know if we get it? How would we know what action to take to go get it? And it's not about what I want, it's about what they want. And then, we figure out the why, that what and the why that we talked about earlier. And then, why don't you have this yet? What's stopping you? What's slowing you down? What's standing in the way? And I want to raise their awareness, because quite often they don't know. And I need to know these things as well. And once we get clear on that, it's really about aligning them with, that natural genius that we all have, right? Genius isn't rare. Genius is developed and understood in a way that you can use it on demand. That's what's rare. And so we'll really get clear on what it looks like when they're operating at their absolute highest level, so that they can create quantum leaps pretty much on demand. And a big part of that is like, hey, where are you wasting your energy? Where are you blocking your energy, or simply not even using it? Because that's such a great word that you used earlier, energy. And we can't create or destroy energy, but we sure can transform it. And if you walk into the room as the CEO and screaming at everybody and throw a laptop through a window, tell everybody how they're failing, and it's, 11 o'clock meeting and you just got there, and then you leave right after the meeting because that's all you're working today is 11 to 12 to scream at people. Like, man, you're completely sabotaging everything that you say you want. And so we're really looking for, where are your desires and your actions out of line? Because you say you want this, but you do this. And, just helping, raise awareness is so powerful, because what we're unaware of is going to control us all day long. But what we're aware of, we can control. And that's with regards to internal.
Thank you, Kevin. So it's amazing because you talked about it's almost the same thing for all levels, because whether you're a manager or above, some of these concepts. And I think, to your point, you might have less of that on the actual top line, executives, but you'll have a lot more of the issues that you just mentioned about laptops and things like that, with someone that is maybe entry, level management. Because again, it's either what they've learned before, they're being exposed to, or the power trip, syndrome that you get because now you finally have that authority. And, especially when, and again, I don't want to be discriminating on age, but age does play a role, because wisdom it doesn't come early, unfortunately. It's something that you learn over the years. I mean, only the few actually have wisdom at an early age, and I'm just one of those. And I can say, I personally, when I started, I actually started with, because what I learned was you walk into a room and you start, kind of like becoming the boss. And it didn't take long to realize that was not the appropriate way to do it. And I had changed my strategy and my approach. And, it's funny, I use a very simple saying these days, which is you can have better with honey than you can have with vinegar. and that applies to business royally. I mean, I can ask people, I made a joke about this, and it was a true thing. I had a team player that actually had a wedding, and we were called into this last minute meeting in the same day of his wedding, and everybody had to be there. And I reached out to this person, and he showed up to that meeting in the morning of his day of wedding. He wouldn't have done that to anyone, but he did. And what he had told me, I'm only doing it for you. Now this was a favor I asked, but there is that thing. Like when he needs something, I'm always there. See, like, for example, some people are so tight with their policies and stuff. Policies are great. You have to follow policies. I'm a big compliant person when it comes to policies, but there are certain things that we have to be flexible with. I mean, you're working with humans. Humans need some level of flexibility. Not everybody is going to be always on point 100%. You need to see, like, sometimes they have personal stuff that they have to. If they're happy taking care of their personal business, they'll be able to do more for me. And sometimes we lose that touch. No. The business rules are like, you have to show up at 9 o'clock. If you're not here at 9 o'clock, the world ends. You can show up at 9:30, the world's still going to be here. Trust me. As a matter of fact, I had a joke earlier. I was in the meeting. I literally stated that, if I disappear today, there will be a replacement. Somebody will come in. It's just going to take a month or two and they'll have someone else. Maybe they're not going to never have another hurricane, but they're going to have someone in the role of hurricane to do whatever name. There may be a cyclone, but the idea is they'll be there. But you know what I mean? So the concept is like, you're in different roles, and you need to understand that you want to work with people, because how would you like people to treat you? That we use that in a common world, right? Like, we want to dish good respect to get respect back. But our work is the same thing. If you are always, expecting things for you to be easier, but you make it difficult for everybody else, how is that even fair or just? But again, someone says, well, what's fair? What's just? It's not about, it's common sense. If I don't like my hierarchies to make it difficult for me, but I shouldn't be making it difficult for the others, right? Because the way I operate, I look at it, I'm still an employee. No matter what level you are, you're still an employee in a corporate world. And you still have to report to someone. And the CEOs, I've seen CEOs getting fired because the board decides that they're going to be fired, right? So these guys don't even work for the company. They're volunteers. And they have more power than the actual people that make the money in the company. But that's how it is, right? The world always operates this way. And we tend to forget these things in concept. And, we get caught up in just the bullshit. Let's call it what it is. It is not. And I'll tell you, I mean, after 30 years doing this, you will always succeed better if you work with your team, you work with everybody, they're all on equal footing, we're all in the same boat. I mean, again, best example is is a ship, or even worse, in a plane. We always use the ship as an example. We forget the planes, but sometimes in the plane, everybody up there has to do whatever they have to do to survive, because the plane, there's no other way but down, and there's only two ways to do this: either crash it or correct. So you want to bring that plane nice and sound up there, and everybody has to do exactly what they got to do. Ships the same way. If everybody does their job, the ship sails nicely, smoothly, gets to the next port, and they're happy. If there are problems, and someone doesn't do their job, the operation is not running, the ship can get stuck at sea. Not good, right? So it doesn't matter when you are in the business world, regardless whether you own it, you work for somebody. Everybody's working for somebody in a way, but they're working for themselves primarily. And that's another way to look at things. Just because someone is in a position of authority doesn't make them better than you or better than everybody else. They're just that. They have a role. And I always tell to my team, I just happen to have a role that has a different description. And these are the things I have to be in charge of. And you are in charge of these other things. And together we are in charge of making this happen. And that's really how it works. These are just simple concepts. I just break it down to a little bit of wisdom that I've learned over the years, because I've seen good and bad and ugly, and I've been, exposed to both sides. Right? And, I do not want me to be in a position when someone walks in, and I've been in meetings where, damn, I don't want to be in this team. I don't want to be in this, surrounding. This is not healthy. That's the other thing. You're stressed out. How much can you give? Like I have a big beef, pet beef with the attendance of meetings at 9 o'clock. For the longest, that's been we have a meeting at 9 o'clock sharp, and we had the joke earlier about being on point early. I'm all for that. But the purpose of being at 9 o'clock, is it only to drive people nuts, to bring them into the office at 9 o'clock and get them to stress through the traffic jam? Or you want to get something out of it? Because I can do it at 9:30 and have the same better outcome, because now the people are not stressed. And again, it depends on the role. I'm not saying this general rule, because it depends on what you do. There are jobs that need to be in a certain time, operational. But the idea is it's all about understanding what's in it. What is it going to do? What's the purpose of it? Is it going to have more harm than positivity and an outcome that is actually good? Or are we just going to do it because I'm the boss, because I said so? I just want you to show up at 9 o'clock, and, I want to keep you at the office until 5 p.m. because, it's $459.99, I don't know if 99 that applies, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Why? Right? People do that shit. I'm sorry, but I've seen it and it doesn't make sense. Why? But again, I can't change people. Some people are just made the way they are. But in this world we live in, we have to keep adapting and understand. Like we had in the previous show that I did, I told you it's the same theme. Back in the 90s, you had no choice. You had to go back to the office, because that's where your computer and workstation was, and that's when you catch up with our emails. I mean, here you can wake up at 7 and 6, whatever time you choose to, and you can just catch up with everything, send all your stuff, get stuff ready, boom, you're done. You can be driving on the phone and doing other stuff. We can be Zooming, right? Life has changed, and adaptability is a key. Some CEOs have seen that. Some hierarchies and different level of management have seen the changes and trends, and they apply. Also, generations are different. The new generation is not operating the same way as the old generation. We were just made differently because the circumstances that we were raised on, upon and with were different. It were different. Today, technology works. They have a different appeal, in certain ways, and you should be able to adapt as a leader to those changes. So what do you say to that? We're coming up to the end of the show here, but and your role as a coach, are there any things that you really give as key, change points to any hierarchy? Meaning, like you have like these golden rules that you apply with boom, 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 1, 2, 3, 4. If you use these 4 steps, things will be better. Is there such a golden, formula that you actually apply, or are they just, assessments based on the needs for each individual, client?
There's certainly things that heighten the probability of success for sure, but it's going to be applied differently or in a different order to different people. But really, it's understanding, that it's a massive skill to operate from a place of joy or happiness. Even if things are hard, you can still be in a good place, and it's your responsibility to show up the way you're asking the people that you lead to show up. And, we all have hard in our lives. And, the past few years, everybody got a little bit of extra hard. No matter where you lived on the globe, your life got harder, period. And, one of the greatest skills you can possibly develop in the world is to learn to choose love over fear. If you can just do that one thing, everything in your life will get dramatically better, because that is how you create versus just react through compulsion. And if you're reacting, you're definitely not bringing new things into your world. And if you're reacting, you're acting on previous information that you have. And you keep using that beautiful word, wisdom. And what wisdom is to me is when you have a memory without that emotional charge attached to it, right? Because that allows you to create. But if I get emotional reactions to everything that's in front of me, again, that's a reaction or a compulsive behavior. And that's fear-based. And that fear can wear a lot of different hats, right? Because we're always motivated by love or fear. Every single action we ever take, it came from one of those two places. But fear wears all those other hats, like anger. If you're angry, you're probably scared too. And there's a fear in there somewhere. And, shame, guilt, apathy, pride, all of those sit on top of fear. And that's all forceful behavior. And if you force me to do something, like that's a one-time event, because I'm going away from you because you restricted my autonomy. And all humans have the desire for freedom. And, it's so powerful when you come from that place of love, because that's when you inspire and empower people. And, you were talking the great word about transformation earlier. Like that's the goal, is to inspire people to create their own insight so that they have a sight from within. That's transformational coaching and leadership right there. Because unless I fundamentally see things differently, like I may change for a little while, but we're habitual creatures. And so we naturally go back to our habits left unchecked. But if you get me to fundamentally see things differently, the way I see the world, that's what facilitates a lasting change. A change that happens when the leader's not around. And I know just based on this conversation that that's the way you're showing up for people. And, huge shout out to Hurricanes team, man. You guys hit the leader lottery getting to be on his team, because, he's showing up with a humble heart, looking to serve and not make it about him. And man, that's the not so simple secret to success, really, in leadership. It's like, what do they need?
Thank you for that. It's powerful, because you're right. A true leader works for the team, not the other way around. Because that is really what you do. You actually try to make their life easy, to make sure everything that they need is in place so they can succeed. And ultimately, the fruits come back to you. I mean, everybody succeeds at the end of the day. But if you're not there, that's why I said earlier, people, sometimes we forget to thank the people that are, making things happen on the back end or on top. Because some decisions are made, and facilitated for you. And those are powerful things. But that's anybody in the helm of any operation. You are there to help your team succeed, not the other way around. I mean, yes, at the end of the day, it's all an effort for everybody, and it's a one team goal. But if you're not there to facilitate things for them, they're not going to be able to get the tools to do the things you want them to do, and therefore, it's a failure. You don't want that. You want to set everything, the expectations, the goals, the operation, the tools, the platforms, the technology, whatever they need, the support, systems, and you're there with them. What do you need? What can I do for you? What do you need? What can I do for you? How can I help? You check. Well, let's work on this. Let's tweak on that. And you empower them, you tweak them, you make them better at what they do day in, day out. Before you know it, they're all experts, and now they're, learning to something better, And that's kind of like how it is. I mean, to your point, there's a lot. We could talk hours and hours. There are books and books and books about leadership, and we're never going to end. But the fact is, there is no, I was facetious about the idea of a golden formula, because there's none. I mean, there's so many formulas, and we can list, it's not going to be in 4 terms. I mean, there's a lot more about this than people can even imagine. But the idea is, it starts with, to your point, being kind, being humble, understanding your value and what your limits are. Doesn't matter how far you are in the ladder, you still have limitations. Know that. And I believe in something. There is someone that knows better than you everywhere, anywhere. And don't ever think that you are at the highest level of your knowledge. And if we were that way, we would not have, new PhDs and new master's degrees and new doctors and new discoveries and stuff, because someone is always learning new and more and advancing and innovating and getting to the next level and the next level. We'll be living in the ages, the historic ages or prehistoric ages, if we didn't actually evolve to that level. That's because there's always someone's going to know more, and you want to always also learn more. That's the other thing. We never stop learning. Whether you're a leader or not, if you want to be a leader, leaders don't stop learning. You learn every day. You discover new things every day. You have to have habits of things that can give you this. Learn from others. It's okay to learn from others. It's okay. There's other leadership skills or styles, and you can adapt. Take the best from everyone, remove the worst that you don't like, and then make your own composite. That's all good too. There's so many ways, but the fact is, don't think that is only one way, and it's always like my way or the highway, as you said earlier. That doesn't work, and because that's an old saying, and I don't think it applies any longer. So Kevin, I know we're really strapped with time here. We've covered a little bit more. This topic we can go for hours, but I want people to reach out to you, because I know if you're listening, whether everybody that's listening right now, working somewhere, whether you want to learn new skills, whether you're in a new role as a manager, or you're maybe wanting to be a manager, or you're already at a higher level that you need guidance, or a company that you think you have a management team that needs a little bit of coaching. We'd like them to know about Kevin's, role and what he does. And so, Kevin, how can we get people to you? And, I'm going to have the description of, the link of your site and everything, but how can they, connect with you, and what can you do for them in terms of, the initial support?
Sure. That's a great question. Well, you can always check me out on our podcast, Unlock Your Freedom with Kevin Kepple. We share lots of great ideas around leadership and some of the stuff that Hurricane and I've been talking about today. And if you're so inclined, come on over to kevinkepple.us, and there's info for leaders on every level there, and you can find the podcast there as well, actually. And next month we're kicking off a high-level mastermind group for leaders that really just inspired leaders that are really looking to maximize their genius so that they can create the quantum leaps in their performance. That quantum leap to where you move years towards your success instead of just in increments. And really, the goal is also to help you create freedom in your life, freedom from stress, freedom of your time, freedom of just living life, and, living life in a way that, serves a lot of other people and really brings you a lot of joy. So, if nothing else, I would just encourage you to, look at the people in your life who are really powerful, who helped you, and, what did they do? And what did they do that you can model? And, for those that maybe fell a little short, you got to know they were doing the best they could with what they had. And so I think having grace is utterly important too, to just happiness in general, grace for yourself and grace for others. And, at the end of the day, if you can just do that, you're going to have a pretty good life.
Kevin, thank you for those words of wisdom. Words of wisdom, rather. I was going to ask you, can you give us some last words of wisdom? And you just did already. So, well, I guess you do this for a living, so you are always close with the best words and some nice message out there. And I thank you for that, because I think that resonates with people well. And I think that was a powerful message for everyone. Doesn't matter what your status is in any hierarchy, any corporation, any business. It is still for you as a human, and that applies. So thank you, Kevin, for that. And folks, as you listen to this show, please check out, Kevin's, site and his podcast. There's so much to learn from Kevin and his, a whole, concept. And I think you do this, remotely, so you can do it worldwide. Doesn't matter if someone needs the help, you are available to them, and you can do this with them and guide them in their ventures and journeys. So folks, please do so. Kevin, I want to thank you for being with us and for all the wisdom here. Folks, I want to thank you for being with us, watching and listening in today, and stay tuned for another show and just more insights. And for me, Hurricane H, I want to say bye, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.